2 women, 1 day, 1 killer, and a case that would later captivate millions across the internet. When people first heard the name Wade Wilson, many immediately thought of the Marvel character Deadpool. But in October of 2019, that name became associated with something far more disturbing. Behind the tattoos, the headlines, and the viral social media attention was a man accused of committing 2 brutal murders within a matter of hours. A man whose crimes would shock investigators, a man whose appearance would generate online obsession, and a man who would eventually be sentenced to death. This is the story of Wade Wilson, the man known as the Deadpool Killer. Before Wade Wilson became the subject of national headlines, he was already living a chaotic life. Born in 1994 and adopted as an infant, Wilson's early years appeared relatively normal from the outside. But as he grew older, problems began to emerge. Friends described him as charismatic and capable of being charming when he wanted something. Others saw a darker side, a pattern of manipulation, drug abuse, impulsive behavior, repeated run-ins with law enforcement. By his mid-20s, Wilson was drifting through life, struggling with addiction and accumulating criminal charges. But nobody could have predicted what would happen on October 6, 2019, a day that would leave 2 women dead. The night began like countless others. Wilson spent the evening drinking. At some point, he met 35-year-old Kristine Melton. Kristine worked as a bartender and was known by friends as outgoing and kind. After meeting, the 2 eventually returned to her home. What happened next remains one of the most chilling aspects of the case. According to prosecutors, Wilson strangled Kristine inside her own house, a place where she should have been safe. Investigators later found evidence indicating she had been killed there. But the violence didn't stop. Wilson allegedly stole her car and left. For most murder investigations, that would have been the entire case. For Wade Wilson, it was only the beginning. Hours later, Wilson encountered another woman, 43-year-old Diane Ruiz. According to investigators, Diane was walking when Wilson approached her and offered a ride. There was no relationship, no argument, no known motive, just a chance encounter. Prosecutors would later argue that Diane unknowingly stepped into a vehicle with a man who had already committed murder earlier that day, and she would never make it home. After entering the vehicle, Diane was attacked and strangled. Then came the detail that would horrify even experienced investigators. According to evidence presented at trial, Wilson repeatedly drove over her body, again, and again, and again. The brutality was almost impossible to comprehend. When her remains were discovered, investigators immediately recognized the extreme violence involved. As detectives worked to piece together the murders, Wade Wilson quickly became their primary suspect. Witnesses placed him with both victims. Physical evidence connected him to the crimes. And investigators began racing against time. Because if Wilson had killed twice in a single day, nobody knew whether he would strike again. The search intensified. Law enforcement agencies coordinated efforts across multiple jurisdictions. Every hour mattered. Then finally, police found him. Wilson was arrested and taken into custody. But for the families of the victims, the nightmare was far from over. As the trial began, prosecutors laid out their case: witness testimony, physical evidence, digital records, statements allegedly made by Wilson after the murders. Piece by piece, jurors heard details of what investigators believed had happened. The evidence painted a disturbing picture, not only of violence, but of apparent indifference afterward. Family members sat through heartbreaking testimony, photos, autopsy findings, descriptions of the final moments of their loved ones. For them, every day in court was another reminder of what had been taken away. After hearing the evidence, jurors reached their decision: guilty. Wade Wilson was convicted of murdering both Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz. But one question still remained. What punishment should he receive? Prosecutors sought the death penalty. They argued the crimes were exceptionally cruel. The jury agreed. And in 2024, Wade Wilson was formally sentenced to death. What made this case unusual wasn't just the violence, it was the reaction online. Courtroom photographs of Wilson spread rapidly across social media. Thousands of people discussed his appearance, his tattoos, his facial features, even his resemblance to fictional characters. For some observers, the fascination became deeply uncomfortable, because while the internet debated the killer, the victims risked being forgotten. And that is perhaps one of the strangest aspects of modern true crime. The person who commits the crime often becomes famous, while the victims become footnotes. Today, Wade Wilson remains on death row. His future will be determined through years of appeals and legal proceedings. But regardless of what happens next, two facts will never change. Kristine Melton lost her life. Diane Ruiz lost hers. And two families were forced to endure unimaginable grief because of the actions of one man. Behind every headline, behind every viral photograph, and behind every true crime documentary, there are real people whose stories ended long before the cameras arrived. And that is the true tragedy of the Wade Wilson case. Thank you for watching Diabolical Files. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to support the growth of our channel, and let us know in the comments which case you'd like us to investigate next. See you in the next video. Bye.